I can tell you like the kids to be in one area and the adults to be in the other.
In 2023, David Bromstad experienced a loss that went far beyond property damage. A powerful storm swept through Florida, flooding his carefully designed home, destroying structural elements, and leaving much of the interior unusable. The house he had spent years creating, the sanctuary where he felt safe and in control, was suddenly gone. It was the first home he had ever built entirely on his own, a place where he could be himself without expectation or audience, a place of quiet and freedom in a life that often demanded constant performance. The storm did more than destroy walls and roofs. It disrupted the emotional stability he had carefully cultivated for decades. The sanctuary. Before the storm. Before the flooding, David's home was a reflection of him. Vibrant, playful, and intentional. Every corner, colour, and detail spoke of thoughtfulness, creativity, and joy. The house was more than a living space. It was a haven where he could relax, breathe, and restore balance after long days of work and public attention. It held elements of his childhood, treasures that made him smile, and rooms designed for calm and contemplation. Here he could cook, sleep, and simply exist without performance or expectation. The house functioned as an emotional anchor, a container for stress and a place to process life away from cameras and deadlines. Its destruction would later reveal how integral it had been to his overall well-being. The storm and its immediate impact. When the storm struck, the change was sudden and brutal. Water infiltrated walls, floors, and structural supports, leaving behind mold, damaged surfaces, and chaos. Rooms that had once felt intentional and comforting were now stripped to bare frames, exposing the bones of the home. What had once been a refuge now triggered anxiety and disorientation. Repairs and reconstruction could not replace the sense of safety the house had provided. The familiar environment that had allowed him to regulate his emotions was gone, leaving him to confront instability in both his surroundings and his inner life. The physical loss mirrored emotional vulnerability, a reminder that even the strongest structures could not contain everything. Maintaining composure in public. Despite the upheaval at home, David continued his work on television, maintaining the optimism and professionalism audiences expected. From the outside, everything seemed normal. He showed up on schedule, delivered thoughtful commentary, and upheld his public persona. Yet beneath the surface, the loss of his home removed the one place where he could truly decompress, forcing him to face stress without the support of a familiar sanctuary. The combination of personal disruption and ongoing professional demands created pressure that accumulated quietly, leaving little room for reflection or recovery. It was in this quiet tension that David began to recognize the limits of relying solely on routine and resilience. The gradual adjustment. The weeks and months following the storm were marked by a gradual, often unnoticed erosion of emotional stability. Without the physical and symbolic structure of his home, small stresses felt heavier, decisions became more exhausting, and the mental load of daily life grew. Temporary living arrangements offered little sense of permanence, and the ongoing process of repair and rebuilding extended uncertainty. Yet David's professionalism and commitment to his work remained, creating a delicate balance between functioning externally and adapting internally. The loss of the house became a quiet turning point, an event that revealed how central a stable personal environment had been to his ability to maintain equilibrium, recognizing the need for support. Eventually, David acknowledged that he needed intentional support to navigate the impact of the loss. The process began with physical stabilization, allowing him to regain consistent sleep, energy, and focus. Adjusting to a new routine, free from distraction or overcompensation, meant confronting emotions he had long deferred. Therapy sessions helped him explore patterns of control and avoidance, understanding that the storm was not the cause of past vulnerabilities, but rather the moment when existing coping strategies were no longer sufficient. This realization reframed the narrative from self-blame to insight, allowing him to see the disruption as an opportunity for learning and growth rather than failure. Rebuilding emotional regulation. As treatment continued, David worked on rebuilding the skills that had been supported by his home. He learned to recognize early signs of stress, such as restlessness, disrupted sleep, and emotional tension, and to respond proactively rather than reactively. By attending to both physical and emotional cues, he began to regain a sense of control that did not rely on external perfection. The process was gradual and uncomfortable, but it allowed him to establish balance in a way that was sustainable. Recovery became less about achieving dramatic transformation and more about maintaining consistent awareness and self-care, a practice he could carry forward in every area of life. Reconnecting with self. An intentional period of reflection followed, including a solo trip to Norway for his 50th birthday. The journey was less about celebration and more about presence, requiring him to engage fully with his body, environment, and emotions. Climbing steep paths and navigating unfamiliar terrain reinforced the lesson that endurance and attention could coexist. The experience became a metaphor for resilience, moving through discomfort without avoiding it, acknowledging limitations while maintaining agency. It was a reminder that stability comes not from escape but from sustained awareness and thoughtful action. Returning to the home. When he returned to Florida, the house was still unfinished, a visible reminder of loss and ongoing work. However, David's relationship to the space had changed. He no longer relied on it to absorb stress entirely. Instead, it became a supportive environment within which he could practice balance and mindfulness. Boundaries, routines, and self-care replaced dependence on physical surroundings alone. The rebuilt home symbolized not just restoration, but also the lessons learned about resilience, self-awareness, and intentional living. It became a place where presence mattered more than perfection and where recovery was visible in daily rhythms rather than dramatic gestures. Living with awareness. The rebuilt home, the ongoing work, and the public sharing of his experience all reflected a deeper internal reconstruction. David's daily life now incorporated attention to both mental and physical health, a recognition that performance alone is not enough to maintain balance. The house supported him, but it no longer carried the weight of emotional stability alone. He cultivated routines that allowed presence, awareness, and responsiveness, reducing the risk of escalation before challenges became overwhelming. Vulnerability became a signal for care rather than a weakness, and discomfort became an invitation for reflection rather than avoidance. A measured stability. What remained after the storm, the adjustments, and the period of reflection was a more precise, measured life. David Bromstad continued his career, maintained visibility, and engaged in creative work, but with boundaries and awareness that prevented the quiet erosion of stability. The house was a home again, but its function had shifted from holding him together to complementing the inner skills he had learned. Recovery and self-care became active, daily practices rather than distant goals. He could navigate pressure without losing himself, honor limits without retreating, and live fully without hiding challenges behind momentum or performance. Conclusion. David Bromstad's experience illustrates how deeply intertwined our environments and emotional regulation can be. The loss of his home revealed vulnerabilities long present but quietly managed, while the process of recovery demonstrated the value of intentional self-care, awareness, and boundary setting. By rebuilding both the physical structure of his home and the internal structures of his life, he created a sustainable path forward. Stability became less about control and more about attention. Presence replaced avoidance, and growth was measured in consistency rather than dramatics. The story of loss and restoration serves as a reminder that challenges are part of life, but thoughtful reflection, awareness, and deliberate action can create enduring resilience and a foundation for meaningful living.